All right, we're back. We are COMP1073. That's client-side scripting here at Georgian in the winter 2017 semester, week 8, part 1 of our broadcast. I want to do a couple things today. One of them is talk about assignment 3, which is going to be due in a couple weeks, right? And I'm also going to be talking about some new stuff. I'm also going to review some things we've already done just to bring you guys back up to speed from a break, right? Because sometimes we go on break and our mind gets wiped, right? That's what happens. And it's normal because you got a lot of stuff on your mind, right? So I'm going to try and bring you guys back up to speed. All right, so that's really what we're doing. Let's talk about assignment number 3 first and talk about how that's good and how that's maybe going to be challenging for some of you. By the way, I don't expect it to be challenging in any way, but that's just, so I think it's going to be easy. All right, so we're kind of into JSON data. When I see JSON data and assignment 3, to me, we're also we're into object-oriented design, right? Which we're going to talk about object-oriented programming, which is the topic for today's lesson. Let's look at, I don't know why this is here. Let's look at this one, which is assignment 3. Now it's up on Blackboard for you. It's worth 15% like the other ones, and it's really easy again. All right, like super easy. All right, so here's assignment 3. A mini portfolio site, and you're continuing with this example. I know I'm hammering this mini portfolio with you guys, right? But actually, it's just I want you to think about it as a vehicle that I'm using so you can build on and learn. It's really that simple. I don't want you to worry too much about the HTML part or the CSS part. It's really all around add-ons, right? So what am I saying? I'm saying extending your mini portfolio site from assignment 1 and 2, please make a new GitHub project. Please don't extend the other one. Remember, it needs to be live as well, so make it brand new, a brand new link, a live site, and all that kind of stuff as normal. You will write JavaScript code to read your paragraph data from JSON, right, using Ajax, right? We talked about Ajax the day before we left. It was the day before the exam. I didn't test you on it. I didn't say, hey, here's Ajax data. No, this is the assignment for that, right? And you will replace the paragraph data that is hard-coded in your current document with data that is read from a JSON file using Ajax. Now, you can use Ajax with jQuery, which we're going to talk about later on, not today. And you can also use Ajax simply with JavaScript, okay? So that's what this assignment's all about. You're going to create a function that uses Ajax to read a JSON file that contains all of your paragraph data. We'll talk about that. And the data that is retrieved from the JSON file should be stored in an array data structure, and then populate the pages of your mini portfolio site with this data. That's it. That's it for 15%. Nice and easy. So you're going to take the data that you already had and read it using JSON from inside of a file and put it up onto your website. Nice and easy. Why is it so easy? Why am I making it like this? Because even this, trying to make it work. Remember that the problem with JSON data is it's asynchronous, right? So you're loading stuff from a file, and you get a test to see these 2 conditions. Who remembers the 2 conditions that you have to test for? I know it's been 2 weeks, so yes.
How is it server status, and then how much the data transferred?
Yeah, so is it ready? So ready state, you're going to check the ready state, and you're going to check if everything's okay. If everything's okay and the ready state is good, you've got, we're going to see that example. I'm going to bring it up. Then you can load everything. And then after you finish loading the data, then you can use it. So you actually have to listen for the data to have finished loading before you use it. Okay? So that's the second. So there's a few things you have to do in order for you to save the data. And I've given you examples of this. I'm going to use an application to test this with kind of going to go over the stuff we've already done. Okay? Your site will be organized into the following structure, which is exactly the same. You're still getting 8 marks for this thing for structure. I probably should not give you it by now. But I'm basically making sure that you're using the same exact structure as before. So I'm paying you again for your structure to be, from assignment number 1 and 2. Right? That's what I'm really doing. Internal documentation is 4 marks. Again, please make sure that you do this. People forget to do this and they lose marks for no reason. And then your GitHub and cloud hosting. Now, cloud hosting means you can also put it up on your own server somewhere. As long as it's up live somewhere and I get a live site, a live link, you're good to go. And the rubric is like normal. So this is due, again, in a couple of weeks. right? It's worth 15% of your final mark, 20% deducted for each day late. And it's going to be the last one of these, right? The next one is going to be much more challenging. But I remember I always give you like 3 easy ones and at least 1 hard one. So the next one is going to be more difficult. Okay. Again, any questions around this one? So all you're doing is taking your existing data that's on your portfolio site already, the stuff you hard-coded, that you put it into, that you're sending in with variables by using document.getElement by ID and pushing your data there. You're getting all your data from a JSON file. So you're reading from the file and then sending it to the page. That's the exercise. Is it really realistic to put some of this stuff onto the page? Probably not. It's not for the realism here. What we're really doing is getting you to manipulate data with JavaScript. On that, there's some things that can help you do that, right? So let's move away from this, and let's look at do a bit of a review before we get into our lesson for today. So again, last we left off with lesson 6. I'm going to bring that up. So I'm looking at lesson 6. I'm not modifying it yet. I'm just going to look at it and to show you what we've done here. This is exactly what I'm talking about here for assignment number 3, right? But the challenge is there are some complexities around this. Now, if you didn't understand lesson 6, remember I put it all in steps for you. So step 1, you need an XHR request object, right? And you need to do this by, in this particular case, I'm using my navbar, XML HTTP request right from here. And then remember I split the navbar into another file because you can use Ajax to load not just JSON data, but also HTML, right? So that's what I did. I kind of broke up our file and I made a partials, kind of a partial navbar file. Here it is. Here's our partial navbar file, which is just our navbar. That's all it is, right? And I'm loading this in as data, right? I'm kind of seeing this as just string data and I'm converting it into HTML. That's what I'm doing, right? So in our app.js here at the top, I'm going from the top here, right? And this is back on, again, for those people who want to follow along, COMP1073, winter 2017, lesson 6, all right, from the last time we were together, right before the exam. We have our immediately invoked function expression, our IFE, which is our closure that surrounds all of our JavaScript, right, to protect it. And then in this particular case, the first thing we're doing is we're creating our nav XML HTTP request object. That's what this thing is, right? With our let. So this is what this object represents. We're using the open method with a get request to open our navbar.html, which sits right here, right? Notice that I have to go up a step from a path perspective, up 1, grab our navbar.html and put it in. Hey, notice that on the assignment, I didn't ask you to do this. I didn't say, hey, take your assignment and piece it together, right? I didn't ask you to do that at all. And I could have, but I want you just to load basic data with Ajax. It's sometimes difficult enough to understand how to make it all work, right? Here's your nav XHR send. This, what it does is finally when we open up the file, we send off our request. Okay, cool. So that means, hey, get this data. That's what it's doing. And when our send actually sends the request to get this data. That's what this does. That's the step 3. Step 4, we check to see that our ready state change, right, has a ready state of 4 and a status of 200. Ready state of 4 means got everything, right? And status 200 means everything's okay. That's what those two things mean, right? And then once that's true, I can load up my navbar HTML. And notice I have my navbar HTML as just an empty object right now, an empty variable, right? I'm loading it up with the response text from this object, right? So this response text, right, from this function here, this anonymous function, I'm basically taking it and I'm assigning it to my navbar HTML. Okay, once I've done that, my navbar HTML variable holds all the data that's coming from my navbar HTML file. That's what happens. So it loads up the file. It's a very simple process, and then it stores it in here. Okay. Now, it's loading. It hasn't finished. It's asynchronous, which means it can happen at different times. And that's why if I used it immediately, I wouldn't see it because it takes time, even milliseconds. My page will load before my navbar loads. And then if my navbar loads afterwards, it's not going to display, right? So what I need to do is I need to load my page after my navbar loads, right? Which means I got to listen. I'm listening for the load event, right, for my navbar XML HTTP request object to finish loading, and then I load my page. Now, what's the problem with this? Can you see a problem? What if, just FYI, what if this never loads? What if I never get my navbar? It means my page will be empty. This is called blocking code, right? I'm actually doing things asynchronously, but I'm blocking my stuff from loading. And I'm doing this on purpose. I'm ensuring that things are in a synchronous, almost a step-by-step fashion, right? Because I'm waiting for my navbar file to load before I link it or put it onto the page. Notice that my main nav.innerHTML is equal to navbar HTML, the file that I just got from navbar HTML, my navbar HTML file. But where is this main nav? Where do I define that? If I scroll up, main nav, document.element.id, main nav. That's inside of my pages. All my pages should have that, right? So if I look at my pages, my index.html, I have a main nav div. So this is the container that's going to hold my main navigation. So I'm going to inject data right here between these two little arrow angle brackets, right here. So my main nav will contain at runtime, after I've loaded my file, my website's working, it's going to inject my navbar right in here, right, from this file. Why is this good? Consistent look and feel. Why is this bad in this particular case? Slow loading, right? I mean, I'm doing it just to show you that it can be done. Is it always effective? Not always. And there's ways of making it better and faster and using different frameworks to get that done. Okay, let's go back into our file for a second, our app.js. That's what this is doing. This is waiting. Step 5 is we're waiting for everything to load. And then depending on which page I'm on, so I'm using a switch case and statement, right? And I'm looking at my document title, right? So I'm searching on document title, whatever the document title is of that page that I'm on right now. Because my app.js is attached to all of my pages, right? The same file. So this is how I switch it. I say, well, if switch my document title, and a switch is like an if-else statement. That's what it is. It's like putting a bunch of if-elses, right? If it's home, then do this. If it's projects, if my document title is equal to projects, then do this. Else if document title is equal to contact, then do this. But instead of doing if, else if, else if, else if, we use the switch case structure, right? That's what we're doing. So because it's much cleaner, right? We switch on the document title. So whatever the document title is, if the case is home, then we do this. If in case it's projects, we do this. In case it's contact, we do this, right? And the break statements break up our code block for each of the cases. All right, that's what it does. Again, this is just review, okay? So that's what we do here for this. And depending on what it is, we use the home link or the projects link or the contact link in our navbar, right? And if I go to my navbar.html, here's my navbar.html. Notice that in each of the list items that give me my links, I have my home link, my projects link, and my contact link, right? They have whatever the ID is for the link. So depending on what it is, I'm going to get a hook into that particular list item, and I'm going to set an attribute of class with a value of active, which means my link is going to show active. It's going to be darker than it would be for the other links. Now it's only going to work for one of them because depending on my document title for that particular page, it's going to show which link is active. That's how I do it. Okay. All right, I have another switch case over here, right? And notice that if my document title is home, right? Well, that's interesting. I did that here. Do I have to do that here? Document title, document title. I mean, I could combine these two, yeah? I could put them all in the same code block. Here's something else that's really messed up, right? I'm just putting it out there for you guys, right? I'm making my switch case, and I'm putting code in my switch case, and that's not recommended. It's better for me to have functions, right, that I call, because then my code becomes easier to read, right? Like, for example, what I'm doing here might be okay because there's not a lot of stuff going on here, right? But here, when I'm doing all this in some kind of switch case statement, right? And the only case I care about is home, right? Notice I don't care about anything else, right? Or here's projects. Here's my projects page. I mean, I'm kind of doing the same thing over and over again, right? I'm doing the nav bar stuff. Here's my nav bar, right, with the switch case. So when my nav bar loads, I do all that. But I'm also switching everything else. So it's almost like I can combine my code and make it more efficient if I do that. For example, I just can call my function load homepage, load contact page, load whatever the page I want, and put all that code that's in there inside my load functions. So I'm going to do that. That's one change I'm going to make today. Restructure my app a little bit to make it work, and check it out. So this is lesson 6. I want to go into this and just redo this with lesson 8. So I'm just going to duplicate this page, duplicate this project, and we're going to call this lesson 8. We're also going to start a new section to talk about lesson 8. So that's why I'm bringing this up. And again, just like we did last time, I want to delete a couple things from here. So first, I'm going to bring this up and just kind of drag and drop lesson 8 in here. And we need to make some changes before I create my Git repository, right? Now, even though I have one, I'll kill my Git repository in a second and start a new one. But remember that I have a couple things. My project's HTML is one thing. My readme.md's got to change. It's got to be lesson 8, right? So we'll say it's not communicating to the server with AJAX right now. It is JSON data and object-oriented programming, OOP, right? That's what the lesson's all about. And this is not lesson 5. It's not lesson 6. It's lesson 8. So that's going to be the actual lesson that I'm going to use, right? I always try and remember to try and do it properly, but sometimes it's not possible. Leave the web config alone. That's just for our Microsoft Azure compatibility. That's what we're doing there. Bower RC, we're not changing. Bower.json needs to be changed because just like everything else, it shouldn't say lesson 6. It should say lesson 8. There's lesson 8, right? And anywhere else you can think of that's got lesson 8 all over it. Like our index page doesn't say lesson 8 anymore, or lesson 6. It says it's a games list that gives me my cost and rating. Notice I also load my games JSON data. This is my games JSON data, right? My games list, right? I wonder if there's somewhere else I can get this from, right? Remember I talked about the second half being more challenging? Here we go, folks, right? Now we're in the big leagues. And the first half was us scratching the surface and getting to know each other. And now we're lovers. I don't know if there's a better way to say that. From a programming perspective, please take that into account. We're not really lovers. I'm just joking. I'm being sarcastic. So what I mean by that is that we need to really get into this. And it's going to be more serious, right? Because we have to do more advanced stuff. That's what it means. Okay? So now we've done this, we've redone this. I want to redo my GitHub stuff, right? So I'm going to open up my terminal or command prompt, just like we would. And again, it doesn't matter if you're a Windows or a Mac user or some other user, Linux user. I need to do a ls-al here if you're a Mac user and remove my .git folder. So remove my rf.git, right? And then start off on your Git repository because I told you that's what I want to do with lesson 8, right? Okay, so I can do it through the tool. I can go through here and initialize my Git repository, or I can do it through command line. Today I'm going to do it through command line. Let's say git init, git add dot. You guys should know all the git commands by now, right? Or most of them, the ones I've shown you. Git commit -m and initial commit. There you go. Clear. And now I need the repository for all the stuff where it's going to go. So let's take a look at this. So again, GitHub under Georgian, and we're going to add a new repository, which is going to be COMP1073, winter 2017, sorry, lesson 8, right? There we go. And grab these last 2 bits right here, instead of me typing it out by longhand, and oops, and paste them in there, right? So now our Git repository is live. You guys can go there and grab it if you want to start with me, right? It's right here. Okay. Yay. We started one part. Now let's test it out. Okay, so how do I test it out? I'm going to use light server. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go light-server, and it's going to bring up my local files. Refresh here. There we go. And this is what I get. Okay. So I got my games list. I got my different games. This is coming from a file, and I've got my projects. Right. We did these funky little effects of the projects, and my contact me page. Here's my contact me page. All this stuff remains. Right. My portfolio site. The only thing I'm adding in now is, you know, we're going to try and restructure our stuff a little bit. Right. Let's take a look at this. All right. So we're going to go back to here, and we can see that our files need restructure. We're kind of tightening things up and tightening things up, right? Okay, question. Like I said, let's for the first part, whenever I try and restructure my files to make them more realistic, right? The one thing I always recommend to all users is do it step by step. Don't do it all at once. That would be very bad, right? If you try and restructure your files, right? So I'm going to put them in here inside this switch case where switch is my document title. I want to put all my stuff in here, okay? And I have this stuff over here, right? Where I have my data and my JSON data and all this kind of stuff holding up and everything else, right? So I have all this stuff, and then I have all this project stuff, and I have all my context stuff, right? I want to kind of create all of this so that it is, you know, different functions, right? So the way to do that, which I recommend, is create this switch statement just sitting here, right? This thing is going to launch when I finish loading this add event listener thing, right? So notice this is kind of sitting out there too. This is kind of in the middle of nowhere, right? It's almost like I got to restructure my entire document, right? And let's start off by restructuring the top part, okay? So the first thing I want to do is create something called some kind of start function that starts off my entire thing going, my entire application, right? So I'm going to call this at the top. I'm going to create a new function called start, right? That's my new start function. And right now, if you notice, it's empty. I want to take all of this information, the top nav stuff, right? This stuff here, all of this, and I want to put it inside of my start function. So cut it and move it in here. And why am I doing that? I'm doing this because my start method, that's the first thing I want to do, is what I want to start with. Okay, cool. I've made a change. I've moved my stuff into my start method, right? That's all I'm doing. However, is it ever going to work right now? No, because I've never launched, I've never called my start method. If I put something into a method or a function, I need to call that function in order for the commands in that function to trigger, right? So I need to call this. And when do I want to call this thing? I want to call it when the page loads. All right, so when my page is finished loading, right, I want to call my function. Uh-oh, my page loads. I want to call my function. Then I want to actually load my page up. Is this going to work? Let's see. I'll leave the rest in there like the way it is. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to get rid of this let my variable is equal to 500 for a second, right? And on the bottom of the page, I want to do something like this. Window.onload, there's an event, is equal to start. Okay, what is this doing? We talked about events before, right? What this is doing is saying, hey, when the window object, when my window loads, right? Start off my start method. Call my start method, right? My start method is the event handler that's going to be called when my window is loaded. That's what this means, okay? So call the start method, the start function, yes, when the window loads. I'm not calling my start method. I'm making a reference to it.
Oh, okay.
So my onload event is an event, and I need to point to a callback. My start is the callback function. Start is the callback function. That's what it is, right? Callback. I better put that in there because you guys are going to go, what's CD? Callback. Callback function means this is the handler, right? Start is the callback function or event handler. Right, that's what it is. Okay? So I'm saying, hey, for the onload event, start is the callback function. Okay. Let's see what happens now when I run this thing. Okay, so I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to rerun it. So I'm going to go light-server, right? And let's see if everything works the same way. Yay! Worked the same way. Let me refresh to make sure. Right, it's still loading the same thing. Let me just go in here and do an inspect. I want to go back down to the console. And do I get any errors? Oops. Do I get any errors in the console? No. No errors, right? How about elements? Let's take a look at the elements now. Or the, sorry, sources might be a better thing to look at. If I look at sources, that's another thing we can look at. I can see how it's structured. I can go back up and I see now that my function start is inside, oh, all this stuff here is inside my function start, right? So it's the latest code, right? Cool. All right, I like that. This is good. This is getting better. So now in my start method, is there something else that I can break up in here to make it even better? Because my start method has a lot of setup, right, for my nav bar, right? It's almost like I want to load my nav bar, right? Let's make another function on top of start, like this. So function, right? And we'll say load nav bar. So, you know, for example, just don't worry about my uppercase for now, okay? And I want to take all this stuff, right? I'm just reorganizing, right? I'm going to show it to you. So take all this stuff out of my start function, put it into my load nav bar. All right, cool. I'm compartmentalizing, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm making modules. Cool, but my start method is empty now, right? So I'm going to call my load nav bar, right? Why would I do that? Because now it's very clear what I'm doing. When I start my method, start my application, I load my nav bar. That's the first thing I do, right? Yay, right? Nice and easy. Next, I want to load my content, right? Load my content. And I know this is going to happen. By the way, does it matter where I put my functions? What if I put my start function, this one here? What if I put this one at the top over here? Does it matter? No, because it's inside the same context. It's okay, right? As long as load nav bar exists, it does, I'm good to go. All right, next. If I scroll down here to show you, I've got all this stuff, right? I want all this stuff to trigger, right? This is my content. I don't care about switching, right? For now, all I care about is load my content, right? Load my content. So I want to load my content for the page, and I'm going to call this load page content. So I'm going to make another function. Here we go, function. I'm going to call this load page content. I'm just making this up, guys. It's not that big, right? I'm going to take all this whole switch statement, all the way down to here, not including the load, the onload, right? Got it? Go in here and paste it. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to call my load page content. I'm going to call this from my start. Wow, now look what I'm doing here, right? I'm kind of organizing my files so that when you read my document, you're like, okay, what does he do first? First, the start method is called. Second, my load nav bar happens. Third, I load my page content. Make sense? Yeah, that makes more sense, right? It's more organized. So this is my first, so this is the app entry point. That's what this is. That's what this start method is, right? This function, loads the main navigation. That's what it does, right? Right, using Ajax. That's what we're doing, right? That's what this function does. And then down here, this page content, loads. It's pretty simple. Loads the page content or the content for each page, right? Using the document title. That's what it does, right? Okay, this is good. I still can even go further than this. First of all, let's test to see if this works. Did I make a mistake? Something go wrong? Right, I need to test it, right? Let's see what happens. So we're gonna go back to my site, right? Here's my site. Let's see my console. And if I refresh my page, I'm okay still. And let's see if my content's still there. Yeah, right? Yeah, it's all there still. So everything works, right? Because if it didn't work, then my page wouldn't have reloaded. Look at my sources. Notice that now I have my navbar, load paint content. This is right on my browser that I'm getting this. And if I'm getting this in my browser, then that means that it's been reset or refreshed. My new structure is being used, right? Cool, cool. Everything's good. Let's go back, right? Stop me from going too fast, please. This should be all review and a little bit of restructuring. That's all I'm doing right now. Okay, cool, cool. I can go further, right? My load page content, that's cool, but I want to load my home page, and then I want to load my projects, and then I want to load my contact, right? I want to do that in three separate functions, right? So I'm going to kind of break that up to function load home page, right? And I'm going to take all the stuff that's inside here, inside of my home case, up until the break, cut it, go over here and paste it. My load home page, nice and compartmentalized now, right? And I'm going to put that inside my case statement, load home page. Oh, isn't that nicer? Look how simple my case statement becomes. More readable too, right? Document title, in case it's home, load my home page. We're going to get there to the point where you're going to look at it and go, can we? And yes, the answer is yes, you can, right? You'll see what I'm talking about in a bit. All right, well, I put this all up here, but my standard is putting it below. So I'm going to kind of take all this stuff here. Oops. Ooh. Take all my stuff above, which is from here, from above 58. I'm just playing with you guys a little bit, but I want you to please take this seriously. Take this, cut it out, and put it at the bottom underneath my, way down here, underneath all this stuff. This is where all my page content's going to be, right? So my load homepage. So this function, what does it do? Loads the content of the homepage, right? So this does. Cool, cool. And I want to do the same thing for projects, which means down here, underneath this one, I'm going to put another little thing that says load projects page, right, which is going to be a function. And I'm going to take all the project stuff, all this, up until the break, cut it, and put it inside that little space in there. Good, 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 good. Nice compartmentalization, right? And of course, I can't just leave it there, right? Because now we need to kind of, in my case statement, I got to load my projects page, right? There we go, nice and easy. Okay, so this is my first case, my home page, my projects page, right? And now my contact page. Function load contact page. Anyone have any issues with this? Please speak up. We're going to go from here after this, right? So I don't want you guys to be shocked or, what was he doing? How come he did that? You know, how did it work that way? It's not that difficult, but that's for me, right? I don't think it's difficult, but maybe for you, you know, I'm going too fast, and that's okay, right? Why you can slow me down by saying, Tom, slow down, right? Load contact page. There we go. Okay, cool. So now let's take a look at this little function I've got, right? My little load page content loads the home page, loads the project page, and loads the contact page. Uh-oh. Wow, I'm really trimming down here. Do I really need this function? Answer is no. But let's just go with it, right? So my project page, this one here, it does loads the content for the projects page. Okay, there we go. And this one is loads the contents for the contact page. Fantastic. Awesome. Here we're just going to call the start function when the window loads, and everything but everything is inside of this other function. Notice that we have like functions within functions within functions, and this is sometimes referred to as function hell, right? Seriously. That's the actual name for it. But actually, this is not really function hell yet. This is just one level deep. Function hell is when you get like 4, 5, 6 levels deep. Function within a function within a function within a function, right? All right, that's cool. I got all this stuff. Let's test to see if it works, right? Because I did all these changes. Go back out here, and we're still good. I can still see the home page. I can still see my contact page, right? All this stuff is good, right? All this stuff is good. And it's still switching. You see the switching still happening, right? Don't worry about the simple thing that comes up. It's just me reloading. So everything works, right? And it's looking nicer, right? That's the idea. It's more organized. One of the biggest problems with JavaScript to date has been spaghetti code. It's not organized properly. I don't understand how it's working. Now you can see that there's a structure you can have. And it kicks off from the way we load our page, right? Let's take it a step further. So if we're going to go back to this, right, our JavaScript file, this is nice, but again, notice how I'm already doing the switching. So I'm kind of already doing the switching. I'm saying in my start method, I've got my load navbar and my load page content. You know what? The start method is nice and easy, and I can add to it, right? I can also do a couple of other things. The reason why I broke it up this way is, let's say, for example, I only want to see my navbar, and I want to do some debugging. Great thing is I can just do one of these, right? Go here, tap, tap. Save it, go back, right? As an example, go over here and no content, right? But wait a minute, my load page content, that doesn't load the page content anymore, but how come I'm getting content on all my pages still? What's happening? Did it not change? Well, my home page changed. That's really weird, right? I load page content, but then how is this triggering? This load page content stuff is still happening, right? Why? Where is it being called, load page content? How come it's still working? Here's my load home page, right? Here's my load projects page, and here's my load contact page. Does it happen for you, or do you get nothing? All right, let's test it out further. Let's not even load the nav bar anymore. So, save, nothing. But now I get this silly content right here. Where is this coming from? I'm in my my page, right? I got no nav bar, right? But remember, some of the page content that I'm getting is actually on the page. It's actually on my index.html, my contacts page, my projects page, right? I'm just manipulating it with the stuff that I'm doing. So I'm not really loading pages. I'm actually adding the code for the page, right? So it works. I can troubleshoot this way. I can deactivate certain parts of my page to do debugging, right? And that's why I break it up this way. Is it the only way you need to do this? Absolutely not. If I reactivate it, I got my nav bar, right? And if I reactivate my page content, I've got my page content again, right? That's what it is. That's what it's all about. I can activate or deactivate different elements of my page. I can do the same thing for my footer. I can make that another file, right? If I want to. Load that up with Ajax. Turn that off and on if I want to, from a layout perspective, right? And that's how we can start doing these things, right? I don't want JavaScript to load all my pages though, because again, if something blocks JavaScript, I get an empty page, right? Which is it's not a positive thing. But for me to load information on my page and process the data, I can turn that off and on now. All right, any questions up to date? Let me put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to go up on GitHub, and all I did was change one file, my app.js. I didn't change anything else, right? I'm going to say restructured app.js file. All I've done, right? And now you have it on about GitHub. So if you couldn't follow me, if I went too quick, please check GitHub to compare your stuff with mine, okay? Make sure you have what I have. Now this is fantastic. This is what we need to do, right? Start organizing ourselves. And again, I've got my process. So for assignment number 3, look, you got all the steps right here. And I've even put it in a function for you, right? So it's not like it's that difficult anymore, all right? Actually, it wasn't even difficult before. So I have, it's interesting. I have my load page content, and my load page content switches my pages. Now this is good. I can add more page content depending on my pages, right? And JavaScript right here. It's another section I can load in. Well, my page is starting to get, my app.js is starting to get really long, like really long. Is there a way that I could break up my page in different parts? Is that possible? So I have like the same document, but I want to load up stuff in different places. And the answer is yeah, but it becomes more challenging to structure my application. And I want to not do that here. The answer is yes. So if you're going to ask the question, well, Tom, it's getting really long. Can we break this thing up and put it in different files? Yeah, you can, but sometimes the loading of each of the files takes a little bit of effort. Okay, and we'll get back into how to do that. Now, here's something that I want you to think about. We've loaded stuff on the web with Ajax, right? And we're loading stuff that's local. My local files, I have a couple of one data file, games.json, and this file I'm loading with Ajax, right? As an example. What if I want to add a new game? I want to add a new game, to my games list, right? How do I do that? Right, I got my games list. I want to add a new one. I could type it in here, right? But I want to be able to do something with my JSON files. Can I do something? Can I actually modify my JSON data locally? Can I do that? Do you think it's possible? Can I use JavaScript to modify something that's on the server? And the answer is no. Don't even think about it. Because on the server, it can be done by anybody, right? It can be done by a client. A client is, from a security hole perspective, the client can come up and try and modify a piece of data that's on the server, and then all of a sudden what you're going to get is it could be a malicious piece of code. So we never want that. We never want the client, the front-end code, to modify back-end code, because I can rewrite my front-end code, whatever I want, right? So I shouldn't allow that. And in fact, no server allows that to happen. You can't use front-end JavaScript to modify back-end code typically, unless you have a front-end framework like AngularJS or React.js or something like that. For now, we don't have those frameworks. We're just working with pure JS, and that's okay. Anyone not understand what we've done so far? All we've done is restructure our code. That's it. All right, now let's get into the meat and bones of our lesson as we start. So a little bit of theory for you, all right? A little bit of theory for you at the beginning. And I apologize for the theory, but we need to hit it a little bit. So using object-oriented JavaScript. Again, what we want to do is we have to explain what object-oriented programming is, just for those people who aren't that strong at it. We're also going to use the date, number, and math objects that are built in to JavaScript. And we're going to define our own custom JavaScript objects, right? All right, cool. So why do we use object-oriented programming? Because it allows us to reuse code. And it's not just using a function. Like right now, we can call functions, right? If I want to reuse that same function over and over again, that's fine. But I don't want to have to copy and recreate stuff over and over again, right? The other reason why I want to use object-oriented programming is not just from a reusable software perspective, but I also want to encapsulate my data, right? So, I want to almost have my data treat them as components, this idea of components, right? Or little modules, if you will, right? And the data is the stuff that's contained within our variables. These are different things we've talked about before, okay? All right, popular object-oriented programming languages, C++. Holy crap, that is really hard. One hell of a hard language to learn, right? Well, harder than Java, definitely harder than Visual Basic, and way harder than C#, right? Now here at the school, we do teach C# and Java alongside of JavaScript and PHP, right? The object-oriented language we teach are Java primarily and C#. JavaScript has object-oriented elements to it by default, but typically we use something called prototypal inheritance with old style JavaScript. The new style JavaScript in ECMAScript 2016, right? 2015, I'll be okay. ECMAScript 6, that style can use classes and objects to create stuff, and we'll talk about them. So what is it? So you have an object we create. Let's bring this a little bit larger so you can see it here. Whoa, too big. So here's objects we create, objects created by other programmers, and then this is our program. What's this? These are libraries. These are libraries. Like, for example, jQuery. When we learn jQuery, these are objects that are being created by somebody else. and we just tap into them, okay? These are objects that we create, classes of our own, okay? And then we have our program. It makes up our program. Nice and easy. All right. Encapsulation. I want you to think about the word encapsulation as a capsule. It's like something that surrounds something else, right? I want you to think about more of creating a container to contain all of my data. And I wrap all my data around with this container, the structure that I'm creating, right? So my container is the capsule or the thing that holds all of my data, right? I encapsulate objects so that way you don't know what's inside of them. All you know are the things that I expose, right? That I allow you to see. A good example of this is the idea of a car engine, right? Alex and I were traveling on the highway. Our engine breaks down, right? The car. He's driving a Mustang. I'm making it up, right? Huh? Mustang? No? A Porsche. How about this? If he's driving a Porsche, right? It's a bigger, faster car. He likes it. Somehow, the engine breaks down. We get out. Do we know how to fix the engine? Hell no. We don't know what we're doing, right? No, most of us don't know anything about the engine. We look at it. We know how to press the gas, right? The accelerator to go, and the brake stops the car. That's it. Most of us know how to turn too, right? Other than that, for the most part, we don't know anything about cars. We don't know anything about the electronics in the car. We don't know how the seats function. We don't know how the door opens and closes. We just know it does, for the most part. Most of us. We can figure it out. I mean, if you think about it really hard, we can probably figure out that there's hinges to open the door, that the engine works on a combustion system, that there's probably some spark plugs that ignite the gas that goes inside of it. But again, that's really high level. That's a theory for us. We've never seen gas ignite with a spark plug, right? That's what encapsulation is, right? It's a black box for us. We have no idea how it works. We just know it works, right? We're on a plane. We get into the plane. It flies us to the next place. We don't know how it works. We don't know how, buoyancy works. When it comes to a boat, we're on a boat, we're a ship, we travel from one place to the other. We know that it floats. We don't know how it floats for the most part. Most of us don't understand that, right? Especially large ships. How does that work? How are they designed, right? We're in a building, right? We're in a building. We have electricity that's running into the walls. There's magnetic interference that's all around us because of our Wi-Fi. We don't know how we can use our Wi-Fi. We just tap into it. We know that it's there. If we were back in the days, if some people were time traveling from another time to come to us and look at us, let's say they're from the past, we would all be looking like we have magical items that we use all the time, right? And that's what all of our technology is magic for the most part, for all of us, because we don't know how to use it. We don't know the detail, the details that most people, people who create this stuff know, right? Encapsulation. Or the other way to think about it is information hiding. Right? The idea that we hide all the information from users that is irrelevant to them. They don't need to know the details, right? Like do we really need to know what's going on in the car to drive the car? No. It'd be nice to understand the limitations of what it can do, but that's still just a driving thing, right? Not from a performance perspective. If I wanted to tune my car to make it perform quicker, that's a different thing. That's a different level of knowledge than just using the car. For the most part, most people who use computers, build websites and whatever, I have to tell you, are not developers. They're users, right? They come in, they use someone else's code, they slap it together, and they make it work, right? Don't be afraid of that. I'm not trying to make you feel bad, right? Because it takes a lot of effort to understand the inner workings of an application and of an object, of a class, right? You have to really understand what's going on. So today, start your understanding when it comes to objects for JavaScript. So you're not going to just be driving the car anymore. You're going to actually be building the engine, okay? So an interface is somehow the ability for us to communicate with an object, right? And the idea of information hiding is any methods and properties, things that we're hiding that are not necessary for the user to access or have or understand or to even look at, right? So we hide stuff from the user, especially from a data security perspective, where they don't really need to know everything. And also sometimes if we expose certain objects or properties, and if they access them, they can break our code, right? We don't want that to happen. How can they break our code? An example is this. Alex, I'm going to go to Alex again. Sorry, Alex. Alex makes a program and he gives it to me, right? and his stuff is not encapsulated properly, right? So it's not protected the way it's supposed to be. And I look at the code, I don't know exactly how he wanted to use it, and I use his objects, but in the wrong way. So it starts working, but later on down the line, Alex didn't design the code that way. It was designed to be used in a different way. I didn't know, and he didn't tell me, right? Because that's what happens. And so my code breaks somewhere down the line, and I have a bug that I can't fix. I don't know why the problem is happening. Something in Alex's code. Who knows what it is? It's a needle in a haystack. Look, how many lines of code do we already have for our little simple program right now? Okay, if I go to my app.js, I look all the way down, we've got 183 lines of code, right? And we haven't done anything, really, okay? We've got a navbar, we've got a few little functionalities, but imagine somebody's line code is big, you know, this big application structure, right? And it's not 183 lines of code, it's 18,000 lines of code, okay? And now you're going through line by line, trying to find out where the problem is, and you have no idea where the bug is. What's causing the issue? You know it's just getting an error. Luckily, our tools, our IDs, and our editors are getting better to help us troubleshoot. Okay, let's go back to this. So a little bit of theory. We talked about this. Reduces code complexity. It prevents accidental bugs and stealing of code. This is somewhat true, right? Stealing of code. But nowadays, a lot of it is, that's what open source is. Open source means I see your code. I can see the structure of your code, right? In fact, most web projects, most of them are open source projects. I can see someone else's code. I can take their code. I can modify their code, or even use it as, you know, just reference it and use it in some other application, right? And they give the example of a handheld calculator. I give the example of a car. All right, here's an example. When we do our get element by ID, right? What we're really doing is we're hooking into this method. This method, this get element by ID method, is part of the document object. The document object is a class, right? The document is a class. The document object is instantiated. I want you to think about that word. Instantiated means I create the document object as soon as I have my document. My document loads, my document object has been created, right? When my document object gets created, I have my get element by ID method that I can tap into to access objects, other objects that are within my document object, okay? So that's what this is. This picture is basically understanding how my JavaScript program kind of accesses the document object through this interface that we created called, this method called get element by ID. It's an interface, some kind of method or other thing that allows us to have entry or access to the document object itself. All right? Otherwise, you can't access it. If I didn't have get element by ID, I couldn't hook into it, right? So that's what this does. All right. When we talk about classes, right? And again, you probably have taken, for some of you, taken object-oriented code or programming and design, right? Then you know that it's a grouping of code, right? And typically what we have is we have the idea of an instance of an object. I want you to think about an instance as a copy, right? Or think about the object itself as a model or a template, if you will, right? A blueprint. That's another thing. People use the blueprint idea too, right? You have a blueprint of the house, right? The house model idea, right? And I can make the same house over and over again with my blueprint, right? The houses are all different houses, but they're made from the same blueprint. The blueprint is the class. The house is the instance of that class, right? We can also say whenever we create a house, we instantiate an object of that class, right? We instantiate. That's the names we're using. Here's some built-in classes with JavaScript. The arguments class, the array class, the Boolean class, and a bunch of other ones. Hey, there's even the function class. That's interesting. Notice that each of these classes, right? Each of these classes have capital letters. They're not lowercase, right? So Boolean with a capital B is different than Boolean with a lowercase b, right? Function with a capital F is different than function with a lowercase f, right? Number with a capital N is different than number with a lowercase n, and so on, right? By the way, if you ever want to know anything more about these, and we're going to talk about a couple of them. One of them is the date class, right? We're going to use. We'll talk about that today. And the math class. Those two things. Okay? Those are very common, very, very common classes to use all the time. Okay? Without the math class, you really can't do any calculations. And without the date class, you know, as an example, sometimes you can't calculate things like interest and other kinds of things. It helps you with other things. All right. Here's some built-in JavaScript classes. So when we instantiate a class, I don't know why this thing is so big. When we instantiate a class, what we want to do is something like this. Here's an example of calculate the area of a circle, right? So calc circle area is what the function is called. All right, here they declared a variable r, which I don't recommend. Don't ever use r or b or c. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? This is not good coding, but this is from the book. Document.element by ID radius, yes.
Actually, the RS radius is not as well.
Meh, I don't like it. Should be radius, right? Document.getElement by ID radius, and then I'm going to get the value from whatever that's held in the ID, right? Whatever's there. And then what I'm saying is my area. See, I could have used r radius instead of area instead of r, right? Math.pi. Here's pi. Here's the math class, right? Pi is a property of the math class, right? Notice that it's a property because I don't use the parentheses. If I don't access it with parentheses, it's a property, right? But math.pow is a method, right? Pow is the method that belongs to the math class, right? And it takes two things, the radius and then, or some kind of number, and then what to the power of. So example, in this case, it's saying, take my radius to the power of 2 multiplied by pi, and you get the area. That's the formula, right? And then what you're going to do is return the area, okay? That's what this function does. It returns the area of a circle, depending on the radius. Here's something that I probably would have done differently. I probably would have put in some parameters in here so that it would calculate any circle, not just the circle with r and area. And by the way, where are these variables coming from, r and area, right? I would have written this differently, okay? But notice how we use the math class. Did I instantiate a member of the math class? No. And what is this called? This is something else. There's different kinds of classes. This is a static class, right? Because I'm not instantiating, I'm not creating a method of or a new object of this math class, right? I'm not saying my math is equal to math. I'm not doing that. I'm saying math, hey math, give me the pi, the value of pi, right? When I do that, hey math, when I call the built-in function like that, it's a static function. I don't have to recreate it. I don't have to instantiate any object of the function. I mean, I could if I wanted to, but I don't have to. Not in this case. All right. Here's some other examples, right? So department heads, this is an array, an empty array, department heads, right? Accounts payable is an object, okay? That's the difference. So this is literal notation. I can create an object, it's an array, an empty array that I'm assigning to department heads. Here is an empty object. So there's no template at all for this one. This is what JavaScript allows you to do. Other languages will not allow this, right? They would have another class called object. And you would say this would be the way you would do this on this line here would be accounts payable is equal to a new object. Actually, JavaScript allows this as well, right? But this is what we're doing here, okay? And here's something that looks a little different. Here's today is a new date. So date is the class. I'm using the new keyword to instantiate a new object of the date class, and it's going to be stored, the reference to the new date class or date object is going to be stored in the today variable. So today becomes an object, an instance of the date class, the built-in date class, okay? So now today has access to all the methods and properties that are built into the built-in date class, okay? It's all the methods and properties. Okay? One of the things we always talk about in lower level languages is something of the notion of garbage collection. Garbage collection is like memory management. Okay. Well, the great thing about JavaScript is it automatically cleans up memory, right? So it doesn't do, you don't have to worry about manually cleaning up after yourself. It's almost like your mommy's always going to do your bed, okay? You don't have to worry about it. Don't make your bed because JavaScript will do it for you, right? You use your bed after you're done using it, your bed's made, and actually, if anything, the room just disappears, right? And when you need your room again, you go back in and it appears magically the way it was before, right? When it first started. Wouldn't that be nice, right? Wouldn't it be nice if there's a little pocket dimension that we just press the button, all of a sudden, poof, it just appears when we need to. We can escape there. Time is different. We can study. We can do whatever we want. When we're ready to come back into the normal world, we just come out and it just disappears, right? Wouldn't it be nice? Of course, it doesn't exist. At least we don't think so. All right, so this is the garbage collection. The idea of garbage collection is around memory management with classes. All right. So date, number, and math classes. I'm going to hit this after the break. I'm going to take a short break, right? But I want to show you before I do the break how math and date works. So if I go back to my app.js and I want to say the date today is, I want to show you how, here's my load nav bar. It wouldn't be in here. It'd be in my load homepage, right? I want to put it on my homepage. So after everything loads and I've got my content for my games and everything else, before I get my games, I want to, maybe at the top of my load homepage, I want to also instantiate an object of today, which is a new date. Notice that it comes up. Here's my new date, right? And what I want to say is if I go to today dot, you can see that I have all this stuff that I can do, right? Remember these squares here like this, that means it's a method, right? These are all the different methods that are built into today's date, right? I can also convert it to string. I can make it a JSON object, and it's got a bunch of other stuff that you can use. One thing is get var date, variable date, set date, set full year, set hours. So there's setters and getters, right? And if I want to get the day, right, get day, and I want to send this to console, let's send it to the console, see what happens. So console.log, oops. And I want to send the day to the console, today's date, to the console. So whenever I go to my home page, I want to send the date, the day, to my console. Let's see what happens with that. So go back here, and I want to look at the console, and let's take a look at the console, and I get 3. Huh? What the hell? What does 3 mean? Day. Day of the week? Could it be? It's not a month, right? It's asked for day. Okay. Okay. All right. I'll prove it to you. So let's get something else. Instead of today, get year. Well, get full year. There we go. Get full year. 2017, right? That's what that does. All right. Cool. So another one like that. So 2017. Let's try and piece the date together here. And how about month? Get month. Okay, UTC month. Let's see what that does. 2. Huh? I don't understand. Why plus 1? Should it though? I don't know. Hold on. How about get month? Let's get UTC month. Get month. Right? What does that do? 2. Right? Okay, 2. I want to be able to format this thing, right, as a date, right? So get month is 2, and let's do another one. And then day is 3. Okay, that's weird. And again, to understand we're going to talk about this after the break. I want to get date. How about date? So date, get date. What's that do? 8. What's that? That's the number today, right? So the 8th and the month. That's weird. How come my month says 2, right? And we're in the March month, right? Which means it shouldn't be 3. So then how come it's 2? How come this is 8? It says March 8th. So if you're going with your theory, it would be 7, right? Come on. What? This is confusing to me.
That's the documentation. That's what it says.
I don't like it. Right? Okay, let's do another one. One more time. Check this out for yourself so you can see how we're getting this, right? Get month, get day. Here's day, get day, and get day. Here's get day 3. That doesn't make any sense. Get day is 3. Get month is 2, right? Oh, we're Wednesday, yeah?
Yeah.
So Sunday,
Well, like
Monday,
that, how you-
Tuesday, Wednesday. So if we start counting at 0 again, then Wednesday would be 3.
Counting from Monday, it's the third one.
Are we counting from 1 or counting from 0? You're confusing me.
Month is from 0.
Oh, man. What the hell? A good place to look this up again is W3 Schools. You know, whenever you want to look at the date, okay? Just the date itself, the date reference. And here, notice that the date is in milliseconds. You can say the date is the date string. You can pass in a date, right? Year, month, day, hours, minutes, seconds, and so on, right? If I get day, it returns the day of the week from 0 to 6, starting at 0, right? If I get date, it's from 1 to 31, the day of the month, right? If I get hours, from 0 to 23, right? If I get my month, it's from 0 to 11. You're correct, right? But this is important to understand that, right? Because when we first look at this thing, we're like, holy, what the hell? What's going on here, right? There is no get year, by the way. Get full year is the one we have to use. How about now? This returns milliseconds. So if I go copy, and then we're going to go today dot now. Wait a minute. I don't see now as an object, right? Will it actually do anything with now? Undefined. How come it's saying now here? Oh, wait a minute. How come I couldn't see that before? How come it didn't give me code hinting? Look, even that doesn't work. Today.now is not a function. But it says that on W3 Schools. Is W3 Schools wrong?
Read about now.
Date.now, right? That's different than what I'm trying to do, right? So if I did, I'm just going to pull this up for a second. If I did date, right, dot now, like it's saying, right? And that's not correct. It'd be like this, date.now. And if I was to look at my home page, I'm going to get a bunch of problems, right? Okay, let's just do one of these. And I just want to look at today. Okay, so I'm going to kind of console log today. And I still get this really weird thing. So, I mean, it tells me it's supposed to be that way. Look, this W3 Schools, date.now. How come it's not working? Yes?
I'm trying to create a
New date, right? I can't do a new date. That's using the built-in, I'm using date as, in this case, as a static class, which is, there's a static function called now that I can access, right? So now if I go back and I look at it, I get the number of milliseconds from 1970, which I can then convert into a date, right? That's different, right? So that means in my code then, here, let's undo these things. Okay, I could do something like this, console log, oops, right? Date.now. I could do that, right? Because that's just normal. I can do that too. So I can, in my console log, I can have that as well, right? Okay, but there's got to be a better way of getting like the actual date, like, you know, the day today, which is would be, you know, Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. I should really get that somehow with one line, yeah? Why is it so difficult for me? This is crazy, right? Okay, I can parse the date string, and returns the number of milliseconds. Set milliseconds, set minutes. These are setting the dates, right? Oh, look, converts the date portion of the date object into a readable string, to date string. Okay, let's see how this works. So here's my new date. and then I get my date to date string, and then I get this, right? So that's what it does. Okay, so notice that my n, so if I was to say, today, instead of, I'll put the last one part in there. So, here's the last one. Today dot to date string, to date string. Okay, I'm getting annoyed. Today dot to date string, which is this one. There we go. And notice that I also, in my to date string object, right, it returns a string, but I'm not able to really tell it what to return. Okay, so let's see what I'm getting now. Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. That's not bad, right? But it's kind of weirdly truncated, right? What if I want Wednesday, March? Can I format it from there? I could. So this does, to date string. Let's see what else they have in here. To GM string, okay, use to UTC string. To ISO string, returns the data as a string using ISO standard, okay. That's a little better. I like that more. But I want it to, so to ISO string, right? To GMT string, which would be this one, to UTC string, which is this. That's not bad. It gives you the time as well, right? And to locale string, here's locale string, and here's locale, not local, locale date string, all right? So it's this. That's not bad for a date, right? And here's the locale time string, which you can do that as well. How about to string? Well, it does this. It takes the string, this date object, and converts to a string. That's not bad either, so we can do that as well. To time string, to UTC string, and the value of, in terms of primitive value of the data object, which is not what we want. Questions around the data object. So notice what we did. The data object has something called an API, right? We're going to hear the word API over and over again when we come to use someone else's code. This isn't our code. This belongs to JavaScript. The people who made JavaScript made date, right? So we used something called an application programming interface. And the interface is the methods that are attached to these classes, right? There's different methods here. Some of them are static methods. Some of them have to be, you have to instantiate an object of the class in order for you to use it, right? And that's how it works. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll do more with objects that are built in and maybe create our own.